Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good morning to you wherever you may be. Welcome to the Big Speak webinar. This is Transformative Conversations with Jade Simmons. I'm Marianne Kuga, Marketing Manager at Big Speak, and we are back. We originally intended to take a 1-week hiatus, and then last week, my nephew decided to make his entrance into the world, and I ended up taking some family leave to watch my nieces while their parents were at the hospital. And rather than trying to host the session with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old having a lightsaber battle in the background and me having to take away the toys when they wouldn't stop hitting each other in the face, we decided to postpone. To all of you parents out there working from home with small children, I salute you. I don't know how you're doing it. It is definitely tough. And a lot has changed in the last few weeks. The US federal social distancing guidelines expired at the end of April. And while I remain under a stay-at-home order here in California, I know there's quite a few places that are beginning to open up. And part of me is so jealous because going to a restaurant or getting a haircut or even just going out and seeing other people sounds amazing right now. And another part of me is kind of agonizing because it doesn't quite feel safe. And a month ago, I would have told you I couldn't wait to go back to the office. And now I think about open seating plans and my head starts spinning. And there's still so much unknown about the future, and that there's really almost no point in even thinking about it other than overanalyzing is one of my favorite pastimes. So sometimes I just got to go down that rabbit hole. Okay, so as you can probably tell, I'm a little out of webinar hosting practice and I'm getting back into the groove. And since we do have a good amount of people signed in, it's probably a good time to introduce our guest today, Jade Simmons. Jade is a top motivational and experiential keynote speaker, a rockstar concert pianist, a Best of South by Southwest performer, classical music's #1 Maverick, and a 2020 independent presidential candidate. And Jade, thank you for being here. Welcome. If you could get your video on.
Hey, Marianne, thank
Hey.
you so much for having me.
Hey, Jay, great to have you here. Welcome to the Big Speed webinar.
I really enjoyed your intro on so many different levels. I'm homeschooling here and working and campaigning and everything. So welcome to that world for at least a hot second, right?
Three days.
It's serious. It's serious. No, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm always honored to do stuff with Big Speak. I always say you guys have been so crucial to my mission of really impacting as many people possible. And one of the signature keynotes that I'm always presenting is called How to Move Like a Maverick. And so when people ask me, the expected question, like, what in the world are you doing in the presidential race right now? Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? Why would you put yourself through that? Well, my team and I see it as a very natural iteration. Actually, we're challenging audiences and individuals all the time to look around and see voids. And when you see those voids, you have to ask yourself, I feel like you're mandated at that point to ask yourself, is there something I could be doing, to fill some of these voids? And then if you stumble across the answer is yes, you find that out, that's where I feel like the mandate really comes in, is how can I introduce a new solution that's not currently being offered? So when I teach about maverick behavior, we're always telling people to engage in uncommon behavior, things that people aren't expecting you to do because you truly believe they will offer a much needed unexpected solution or answers to problems people don't expect to have an answer to. And you do it not to get attention. You don't move differently so people look at you. You move differently because you truly believe in the solutions you're offering. So, I've been doing this now for individuals, for audiences, for clients, and I'm excited now to be offering uncommon, powerful solutions in this bid for President of the United States. So I'm open at the end of this as well to questions about that. But today, I really want to focus on what I believe is the new requirement for our new now. There's no more new normal. Like one day we'll be at the new, like we're in it. Like this is the new now. And I believe leadership is going to require just more effective communication than ever before. I'm talking about leaders at the highest level, middle management, employees, everyone now is going to have to upgrade how they communicate. I think we've seen evidence over these last few months how either miscommunication, misunderstanding, misinformation, disingenuous communication, or what I call angled communication, it can be really costly. So I'm excited today to help us all develop the power to have really powerful verbal, digital, virtual communication that I believe can change atmospheres and alter outcomes for the better.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. It's
No
like I'm
worries.
out of practice. So yeah, that awesome. I'm super excited for this whole conversation, and I was, when we were kind of prepping for this session, as we started talking about having these conversations, I was like, oh man, we need this. We really need this. So I'm really excited. So before we really dive in, just a couple of quick logistical reminders for everyone. This session is being recorded, and we will send out the recording automatically tomorrow. You can also find the recording of this session and all our previous sessions on our website at bigspeak.com/webinar. And we are going to do things a little differently today as far as the chats and the questions go. The chats will be open for all attendees to see. So when you're in the chat, make sure to click all panelists and attendees before typing your message if you want the entire group to be able to see it. And we're also looking for ways to make things a little more collaborative for all of you at home. So additionally, we're going to be taking a couple of questions via video. And if you'd like to ask your question on video, please type it in the questions box and then use the raise hand function to indicate that you would like to be on video. Then I'll be able to give you permission to turn on your video and unmute your microphone, which will show up in the bottom left corner of your Zoom toolbar, just like it would in a regular Zoom meeting. And all of this will go off without a hitch, right? I believe in us, we can do it. So let's get into it. And we're actually going to start with a question for all of you at home, and you could answer in the chat box. And that is, where are you currently feeling the most stuck? And it could be something at work, maybe a project, or maybe it's deciding whether to reopen your offices or even to reopen your business. Or if you're like me, trying to decide whether seeing people outside my close family circle is worth another 14 days in isolation afterward. Okay, so in the chat, go ahead and answer. And Jade, what about you? Where are you feeling? Where are you feeling stuck?
Well, James and I have a very similar issue. He's saying that he's feeling stuck with fundraising. And this is a tricky time to be asking people for anything. When we launched our campaign, right before, I think all of the other Democratic nominees, I'm running as an independent, had just dropped out of the race. So everybody was kind of lining up on the left behind Biden. Of course, everybody who loves the president is fundraising in that way. And then when I announced, a couple days later, COVID became a real reality. And suddenly it just seemed really out of sorts and crass to be asking people for anything. And so I think now we're running into that space where there's a little more room to make an ask. And I think what we have to do now is to ask in targeted ways, really ask people based on their passions, where they're wanting to give. You know, it's like we need a valid reason now to give to something outside of ourselves. But I also think the same way, Marianne, you were saying you were kind of restless even being at home. I think people are kind of getting sick of themselves, even sick of their own situations. It's almost like, can I look for something else to focus on and give to? So if we can find the power now in the ask, I've been telling my team, if we don't ask, whether it's for volunteers, resources, for funds, we definitely know the answer is no. But if we find an intelligent, empathetic way to ask, I think we're going to see some powerful outcomes, because people are also feeling restless in terms of only being able to focus on their own situations. I think people are looking for ways to give. I know in Chicago a couple months ago, they made history because it was for the first time they had no animals at their shelter, because everybody wanted a partner. They wanted to give a home. Even in the height of the crisis. So I think there are more people out there who are waiting now to give into something, but we've got to really position that give as a win-win for them, that they get to really feel better because of the give.
Yeah, and so I just want to remind everyone in the chat, there's an option to select all panelists or all panelists and attendees. And it looks like most of you are just sending it to me and Jade, which is fine if you don't want to share it with the collective group, but just know that the option for all panelists and attendees is available for you to send. So I'm just going to read a couple of these in here. Just being stuck, like not taking care of yourself when you're taking care of work and family and everyone and everything else. I mean, I know, I feel like that's a big thing that a lot of us are dealing with right now. Yes, another person said fundraising, and you know, for this audience in this group, planning live events. You know, we don't know when we're going to be allowed to gather in large groups again, and we have no data really yet, and so that has been definitely tough for all of us in our industry, and definitely like not knowing. I mean, I was struggling with this a lot, not knowing when it is safe to see people. You know, when is it like am I being overly paranoid by not seeing anyone outside of my family? Maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to make a decision there, and you know, then you just get analysis paralysis, then go down and then you spin in circles. So okay, so let's get into the questions here, and I wanted to start here because it is, like I said, it's one of the first things that came up when we started prepping for the session, and you know, it's that we're living in a really strange bubble with the physical distancing measures in place in, you know, many parts of the world. Our networks are really limited, and you know, to our existing relationships, and it's hard to maintain those relationships and to develop any new connections. And I get the sense that it was happening pre-pandemic. So kind of when did it start, and what are the factors that were contributing to it, you know, then and today?
Yeah, I'm going to back up a bit and give a bit of a premise here to the concept of a transformative conversation, because I want everyone listening to be able to understand what the value add, the value grab is for them. And I really believe that stellar communication is, if it hasn't already been, it's definitely going to be the top trait that everybody is looking for in a new hire, in a new team member moving forward. And the reason is because it's harder to communicate well virtually and digitally. We already knew that with email, right? I mean, email is like the worst conveyor of so many different things in terms of emotion. But because personal interaction, unfortunately, I do believe will be cut down significantly after this. We saw Twitter already say, hey, we're kind of doing good set up like this. We're not coming back to the office in the same way. And I was telling my team, I felt like that was going to be one of the developments so that people will work more from home now. But because that personal interaction is probably going to be cut down a little more, the chances for miscommunication, misunderstanding, and offense will be much higher. So I believe that people who can communicate at the highest level and help be a part of cutting down, I know someone was mentioning the negativity, right? If you can cut down on the negativity, on the misunderstandings, which create delay, they cause confusion, they create tension, those are the people that will be prized possessions. They'll be prized as leaders and prized as employees and as team members. I'm seeing that now in my own experience. Like if we can just cut through and communicate effectively. But what you're talking about, these kind of silos that we're in, they were worsened, they were exacerbated by this situation. So in terms of everyday social communication, social media allows us to stick to our tribes. Remember when everything was about find your tribe? Well, the downside of that is we found it. Man, we found that tribe, we stuck with that tribe, we talk like that tribe, we look like that tribe. So the problem with it is that we're always now with people who think like us, and they already agree with us. So the danger is that we never get challenged in our current spaces. We don't get challenged in our groups, and we can begin to believe that everything we think is right. I know that feels good, but it's really dangerous. And because of that, because we get agreement in the form of likes, you know, or loves, we get that as validation, and it makes us less likely to do something that's so important right now. It makes us less likely to explore our options, to examine an issue deeper for ourselves. One of the things we've been saying is, listen, don't take my word for it. Research what I just said. Look up what I just said. Don't settle for the information I'm giving you, or your favorite news outlet is giving you, or your favorite Facebook group is giving you. That we now need to be actively exploring. So I think because of the silos you mentioned, we stand less of a chance of stumbling on new solutions, because the value of exploration now is decreased, and it's even considered dangerous. I think the other factor is aggression and animosity. I mean, how many of you out there, man, you made the mistake of saying how you really felt about something, and it's like the attack dogs came out right away and beat you down from it, and you're like, you know what, I am never saying that again. And that aggression and that animosity and that we're so easily offended now. We've gotten a little soft where personal offense happens. And because we're so easily offended, we assume everyone else is easily offended, so we just don't say anything. And I think we've kind of opted for a political correctness, which serves a purpose. But what we really should be going for, and I'll talk about it later, is honor. You know, can we have difficult conversations, but still honor people who feel differently? So you're right, it was existing before this, but because of the containment, we're spending more time in a way on screens, and we're more in our groups that already approve us and think we're perfect and think that everything we say is great. And we like that feeling. So we don't take the risk of exploring and having really powerful conversations that could alter things for the better.
Yeah, and so this is a good segue into just another quick poll for you at home, and that is, what kind of conversations are you avoiding? You know, I mean, I am basically avoiding any difficult conversation right now, and you know, when we're talking, maybe it feels like we're not really saying anything unless we know how the other person feels. You know, the other person, I know that they already approve of me. And so even if I'm talking to a new person, I'm very, very guarded. And, you know, I've been so conflict adverse that I've been avoiding conversations altogether.
And in particular, I'm curious, Mary, is there a certain subject that you avoid the most?
Maybe not. Maybe not in particular. Like I'm definitely avoiding conversations with people in areas that are opening up. Like I actually, like, I've seen, like, on social media, I've seen like people going to restaurants and I'm like,
yeah,
and it makes me so anxious, but I'm not gonna go like, why did you go to that restaurant? You know, it makes, even though these are people that I have, you know, good relationships with, and even if they're people that are in that circle, in that bubble that I can normally be very honest in, and yeah, but like I'm sitting there, like my eyes just bug out of my head, because part of me, like I said before, is jealous. I want to go to a restaurant. That sounds great. But if tomorrow the stay-at-home order was lifted in California, I don't think I would go. I think I would still be too afraid.
Yeah. You know, I'm looking at the comments, and Julie are saying, so Julie's saying she feels nervous to talk to people who are doing less social distancing. She thinks she's become more judgmental, right? You know, and Andy's saying, how do we have that conversation of safe versus unsafe, essential versus non-essential? And I think, Andy, right away, it's those terms that create the silo. It's safe and unsafe. There's no middle ground there, you know, and so we have to begin to speak a language of what I call uncommon common ground. I truly believe that the conversations we have in our homes with loved ones, they have some variance to them. You know, my husband and I will talk about, we don't feel exactly the same about everything, but because we start from a place of I love him, I respect him, we can have a difficult conversation, and we can even go to bed at night and go, I think you're wrong on that one. Well, I think you're wrong too. Love you. Good night. You know, and it's no harm done. And so I think we have to even change how we pose the question, right? So I've been saying from the beginning, it's a false choice to ask us to choose the economy over people. You know, the economy is people, right? If there are no people left, you can't generate the economy. But there are people, like you're saying, someone was mentioning the restrictions. If we're home, we can't fend for our families. And so I think the conversation has to always begin from where's the common ground here? Look, we all want this to be done with. How do we get there sooner? My position has evolved. One of the points that I would love to make that you guys can go home with is there is no harm in the edit. Whether that means the comment you put on Facebook, do not let your pride stop you from editing. As you evolve, let people know. You know, I started out being very strongly against the timing of the reopening, right? And I was very vocal about that, and that's okay. As more data came in, I said, listen, I don't have a problem so much more with the timing of the reopening. I have a problem with the strategy of the reopening. So as we get more information, which is what we should be doing as humans, we should evolve. So I said earlier on, we weren't doing enough testing. We should have been testing 500,000 people a day before we reopened. I stand by that. But I also know we need herd immunity. So if we can get to that 500,000 faster and then be able to move, I'm okay. I'm not against reopening altogether, but I want certain parameters in place. And I think when you're able to show as a human that you evolve, in real time, we're evolving, right? Our leaders are evolving with most information that they get. The danger is, and you'll see this in leadership right now at the highest levels, they'll say something on a Monday and feel like they have to stand that ground. And even as the information changes, they don't change their opinion because they don't want to look like they were either wishy-washy or they were lying. And I think the public knows in our own lives, we change, right? We get more information and we change. And if we can bring that into public conversation, I think we'll have more understanding, you know, versus now when we reopen, it's like what she was saying, that Julie was saying, you're looking at people going, how dare they not have on a mask? And how dare she have on one? You know, I went out the other day and I forgot my mask and I felt awful because and people had their mask on and I was like, I am an evil person, you know, and I felt so guilty about it. But I knew in my heart, my intention wasn't to be defiant. It wasn't to put anyone else in harm's way. I simply forgot that in this new normal now, I have to have masks in my purse, in my car, and all these different places. So I think giving people the grace to evolve and making sure we're not framing the conversation or the question in a way that instantly pits us against each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, and part of just like being like myself right now, being so conflict adverse is like, it's just exhausted, you know, we're all exhausted. And if you're not, like, please tell me your secrets, because I would love to know how to not be so tired. But the collective fatigue is, you know, it's really coming from us having operated in crisis mode for so long.
Yeah.
And to borrow a little bit from Brene Brown, we don't have the stamina to continue down this path. Like, we have to find a sustainable way forward. Crisis mode is set off by adrenaline, and you can't have straight adrenaline for 2 months.
Yeah.
So, so Jade, so what should we be focusing on to kind of move us out of this crisis mode? What questions should we be asking ourselves as we begin to move forward?
That's good. And I love that about the way that we are in crisis mode versus when we're in a time of peace. And, you know, science validates that over and over. I mean, you can't stay in survival mode. Whenever I'm asked to speak at events that are for survivors, one of the first very controversial things I always say is, I want you to stop calling yourself survivors. Because when you put that label on you, your brain is in survivor. You're looking for reasons to have to survive. You're expecting a threat. Thriving is very different. It said, I've got proof now that I can overcome the threat, that I've survived it. Now I get to thrive. It's a very different chemical makeup that's going on in the body when we're in thriving or versus survival mode. And I think you're right to say, how do we move out of crisis mode? Are we still in a crisis? Yes, we are still in a place that is not ideal. But as individuals, we then get to choose. I think I saw someone say they live in South Florida. Folks are not following protocol. So she just stays home. She made a decision for herself. I stay for now because they're not following the rules. I stay. And I think crisis mode, what you have to understand are, what are the risks? What's really at stake? Because I know with performing, I know there's another pianist watching into another pianist speaker, and they'll tell you that stage fright for us is the same as the primitive response of running into a saber-toothed tiger, you know, in the middle of the jungle. You're right to be afraid. And so I look at this piano and my body goes, that's the same thing as a tiger that's going to come to get me. And I have to spend a few seconds convincing myself this thing is not going to kill me. Even if I miss a note, even if I have a memory slip, nobody's going to die. And it sounds dramatic, but that's what's happening. Every conversation that you feel like you have to respond to, you're coming at it from a life and death situation, and it's not. So I think the first thing you have to do is to remind yourself, life and death in the instance of conversation, not in the instance of COVID-19. Death is a very real possibility. But if we look at the stats, life is also more likely. Even with COVID-19, you're more likely to live than you are to die. But because of what we see in the media, the focus is on, of course, the death aspect. But in our conversations, we have to remember it's not life or death. That's the first thing. And then I think we should be honest about the risk we're actually taking, because conversations are risky, right? So you're risking disagreement. Man, I might disagree with somebody I really like. That's hard. You're risking discord. Like, we may disagree to the point where I don't want to be around them anymore, and this thing is broken. It's a real risk. You're also risking probably mostly discomfort. It's going to feel uncomfortable. I have a certain time of day that I read my Facebook comments where the campaign is concerned. Because if they catch me at the wrong time of day, I'm less likely to respond in the way that I'm teaching you right now. So I have to put in parameters for myself in order to respond powerfully. You're also risking disillusionment. That's where, you had a view of something and you talked it out and you realized they're not who I thought they were. Or they think a lot differently. They believe differently. And you kind of have to sit with that. It's almost, it is like a little mournful season of this friend or acquaintance you really loved, and you find out, man, they really think that way. So there is a risk. Those things can happen. But I think there's a lot to be gained, which we can talk about later as well. But I think the first thing to get out of crisis mode is to really take assessment of what's really at risk and what's not. And there is so much to be gained if we can find out how to, someone was saying earlier, Allison, she's so tired of us being ugly when we talk about these things. Can we find a way that's not ugly and have our different views and be able to speak with them, speak to those views powerfully with conviction, because I don't believe you should pretend. Marianne, you were saying, you almost wait to see, I think they already kind of believe this way, so I can say this to them, right? So that's exhausting too. And yes. I think we shouldn't have to communicate that way. But I think the first thing you have to do to move out of crisis mode is to assess the real risk and get okay with disagreement, with discomfort, because I think those are precursors to really having incredible breakthroughs.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually a good segue into talking about accountability, which is because it's been challenging to hold people accountable because we're under the guise of like we're giving people a break because it's a hard time, and it is a hard time, but this can lead to balls getting dropped and things being worse in the long run. And also like being on the receiving end of feedback, like how to I've had some, gotten some feedback during this time, and I'm like, but I'm having a hard day, it's a hard time, and I had to kind of check myself and be like, okay, like this is not this, like it's feedback, and it's not an assassination of my character, it's just feedback. And so you
just assess the risk. It's not an assassination of my character. They don't hate me, I'm not a villain. That's good.
Yeah, so how can we give people feedback, even if it is critical, still being kind and empathetic? And then how do we receive, another way to receive it, when you are maybe not at your best self and are feeling attacked?
Yeah, I'm reading the comments as we go to, and Amy's like, you just answered my question. Anne says it's challenging to now do so much communication through email, right? So this will talk about that. I mean, that accountability piece is almost harder through email. She says, we're writing as the platform and trying to gauge what's going on the other side and how it will be interpreted, as we don't know where people are mentally and the sensitivity levels may be heightened. So that's perfect for this. When I saw this question, I was like, this is so good. Okay, so a couple pointers here that I believe will just save your life where this is concerned. There's magic in the moments before we engage. So whether you're the person giving the feedback or the person taking it, it's more than just a breath, right? It's like there's really magic in that moment, because in the moment, that's where you're assessing the risk. You're really trying to understand motive here. When we were having discussions about the reopening earlier, and we saw a lot of protests, remember the protest? And I said, I wonder if we all just take a second to say, okay, the government of my state, are they trying to hurt me, or are they trying to help me? Now, whether or not they're succeeding, either way is a different question. But what is their motive? Are they trying to make it so I die from COVID and that's why they're reopening? It's probably not the answer, right? Are they trying to make it so I can't provide for my family? It's probably not why they're staying closed. So just that moment, right, before we have the action, that moment will save you to really assess. Also, I'll go back and reiterate, there's nothing wrong with the edit. So even as we're giving the feedback, I'm finding myself editing in real time. I will literally say, you know what, scratch that, let me try that again. Because of what Leanne's saying, it's like you're trying to assess sensitivity levels. I think this is where us being good readers of people comes into play. When I say communication is going to be valued, people who can read people are going to be very valuable commodities. If I can look at Marianne and tell, oh, this is not going over well as I talk, I see something going on in her face, let me adjust. And I think timeouts now are going to be more critical even in discussion. Less is probably more where email is concerned, Leanne. I tend to over-explain. So I usually write that first email and then I go back and take out what's not really necessary. Because this reiteration may feel like I'm piling on. Because I want to give you examples so you can understand why you're not doing well. But if I give you 10 examples, you're probably going to feel like, I suck. And maybe I don't belong here. So can you think of one powerful example of, hey, this thing happened and I bet you didn't intend it to be this way, but this is how it came across. Here's the correction I think we need to make. But speaking directly to accountability to help those that are delivering hard feedback, here's what's true. The times are changing, but your core values haven't. So your core values as a human, your core values as a company, they haven't changed. So you want to hold on to re-emphasizing your core values. If hard work is still a core value, integrity is a core value, speed, collaboration, those things, you shouldn't let them slip too long, because people will forget those things were important to you. And when we're back to normal, the hard work piece may be gone for good, or the speed may be gone for good. And one of the things that I usually lead with is, how can we help you? Like, hey, we noticed this is going on. How can we help you be able to feel comfortable meeting those expectations and balancing what's going on at home? And I'm finding that a lot of people just appreciate you recognizing that they just got a brand new nephew, and being able to empathize and say, girl, listen, I remember what it was like those first 3 weeks out of the hospital. And, I can relate to you on that. And then you understand she really does know what I'm going through. And then talk about what would you need to make that transition back to close to normal as possible? What do you need? So offering help to me has been, it's an unexpected thing to get from our leaders, for them to say, what do you need? Because I want you to feel good working with us, working for us. How do you receive it? Magic in that moment before you engage, right? You can imagine, as a political candidate, I'm receiving a lot of feedback, whether I want it or not. The people who have my phone number will text me with suggestions on what we should be doing and what we should be doing differently. My wonderful father is the author of what we call T-mails. His text messages are about that long. And he sends about 4 of them almost every day. And so how do I honor, right? So my moment is, you know what? He doesn't live in my state. He can't help me physically. This is his way of compensating. It's an overcompensation, but it's his way. So when I respond, then it's not like, Dad, I can't read these long emails. Don't you know how busy I am? It's, man, Dad, this is really awesome information. If you don't mind, I'm going to forward that to my email so I can read it later. And then maybe at the end of the week, we can talk about it. Right? So receiving it, also the negative feedback. Again, I ask myself, you should ask yourself, what are people really saying? What are they really afraid of? So for me, we're coming across people who are just look, maybe they're very critical of the current administration. They really want the current administration out. They see me as a spoiler, as someone who's messing up the other side. And I understand that's fear. It's not really about me. They're fearful of the outcome. They are maybe hateful of the person in office, not necessarily hateful of me just yet. And so my response is usually addressing the fear. Hey, I agree with you. Current administration may not be what we need. Here's what we offer. Challenge you to take the time to find out the solutions that we're providing. And one of the things I always say is just make sure the person that you're backing so hard is also backing you. Check out our materials to see if we back you even more than you thought. Listen, that's easier said than done. All of the speakers who are listening in know that if our superpower is speaking, it's also our super weapon, and we could cut just as easily as we can build up. And it's a choice every day to stay on the side of building people up and not cutting them down, because it's a super skill. We could do it that very effectively as well.
Yeah, and I do want to, I have a follow-up question for this, but I just wanted to prompt people that you can ask questions either in the chat or in the questions box. And so far we have no volunteers who want to be on video, which I understand. If you weren't prepared to be on video today, I completely understand. So really keep doing the questions via the chat if that makes everyone more comfortable. The follow-up I had for that question just in general is like there's email, there's text, there's chat, there's Zoom, there's all these different things. What do you think is the best way to be communicating with people as far as like if you're going to have an accountability conversation with them?
I prefer anything where I can look into people's eyes and be able to respond to what I'm seeing. Body language, sensitivity levels, also sincerity, right? You know, when we're in the process of, you know, onboarding people to be on our team, I need to see who they really are. And sometimes a phone conversation, it's just, you're only getting one kind of sensory level input. So I always suggest video. I know video is harder in some ways because you got to look at the person as you deliver hard news, but they get to also see your face and know that this hard news is hard to deliver. It's hard for me. And so I encourage people as close as we can get to the likeness of physical, personal contact. That's what I would suggest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as far as like Zoom fatigue in general goes, because we're all having it. We're all having kind of like that video fatigue. Maybe the solution there is to, if it's just a chat catch up, maybe you don't have to be on video. You know, like
you never have to. I just, you know, I think especially for difficult conversation, video it's harder, but it makes a different kind of impact. And I think, you know, with maybe like teleconferences and stuff, you have to be even more mindful of not talking over people and making sure they're done before you cut in. So I think you just have to choose based on, it's a situational awareness piece there that you have to use.
Okay, let's go back into the chat for questions. So Amy asked if you could share about fear and how you don't let fear limit what you do.
There's one predominating fear that I allow. And that's the fear of, honestly, leaving this earth, not having fulfilled purpose. That right there pushes me to no end. If I don't believe in accidents. So if there's a certain problem that keeps playing a big part in my psyche, it's on my mind. For me, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been unusually unsettled by the state of politics. I mean, and the state of division. And, you know, I would kind of comment on those things in passing, never posted about politics or any of these things because I didn't want to cause discord. Also because people had a certain impression of me, and my job is based on people feeling really good about everything I say, right? And so the fear, Amy, was that when I start to speak out on certain issues, everybody's not going to agree. You know, Marianne, as much as I like you, if we stay on the line long enough and talk about all the tough issues, we're going to get to a point where we go, oh, I don't agree with that. And we have to decide, is the relationship I've already built with Marianne worth it for me to say, okay, we just agree to disagree and leave it. I don't have to now decide I hate you or I have to do everything to stop you. from existing, right? And so the fear is, I don't want to leave this earth without knowing I did what I was supposed to do, what I was called to do. And that drives me. And it ends up allowing me to power through a lot of the negativity that I might face when I do things that are not expected. And I'm not just talking politics. Every single breakthrough move I've made in my career was challenged. I've talked about managers that I've had that have said, you're supposed to be a classical concert pianist. Why are you doing hip hop beats? Why are you rapping? Why are you talking? Just shut up and play, right? It was the speaking and the concerts that changed the entire trajectory of my career, inside and outside of music. It was adding different genres that changed everything. But I had opposition at every turn. Most of the time, opposition will come from people who really mean you well. Look, hey, we've never seen someone who looks like you before. It's much easier to market a straight ahead classical pianist. We don't have a genre. We don't have a name for you. Why don't you just stay safe over here so we can help you? That's what they were really saying. They weren't saying, you're crazy, don't do this, you're going to be awful at it. Just, it's much easier if you stay here. People usually give us advice out of their own fear or out of their own past and out of them wanting just the best for you. And you have to push through and say, I know that feels more comfortable, but if I move in this lane, I get to make even more impact. And that has driven me. And it's definitely driving me now. And the way that I tell my team is the more opposition we get, the louder the cries against what we're doing, we know we're doing exactly what's needed. We know we're providing a voice that's not being provided. So we must keep going.
Mm-hmm. So to kind of build up on this, I think and maybe this is a more anecdotal, but that people are not able to connect to their purpose as much, or maybe are feeling disconnected from their purpose or disengaged from their purpose right now because things are kind of been so hectic. So what are some ways that we can re-engage or engage to begin with our purpose?
Yeah, to me, this is prime time for purpose, because we were gifted time in this awful dark period to reevaluate, to take inventory again, to reassess, to reconnect. And everybody who's ever heard me speak, there's Judy on here, Judy Benjamin, who I have worked with before, and she knows there's not a stage I'm going to leave where I don't say that your purpose is not the thing you do. It is the thing that happens in others when you do what you do. So this is prime time, because it was stripped from us. Our office places were stripped from us. So our purpose couldn't be being at the office. Our titles, they exist, but we don't get to function in the same way. So our purpose couldn't have been the title. I'm a pianist, right, and a speaker. If that was my purpose, then I would literally be without purpose right now, because I don't get to do those things. So my purpose then is what happens to people when I do any of these things, right? They usually discover something new about themselves. They begin to move bolder because of that discovery, and they start to do things differently. So you look now for what's the new vehicle that my purpose, remember this activation piece, gets to ride out in. That discovery is what allowed me to go from simply playing the piano to speaking, or to authoring, or to ministering. Why is the pianist writing a book about prayer? Well, because I didn't know that the way I prayed was different than a lot of people, because it was the thing I was doing by myself. When people found out the way that I prayed, I didn't know you could pray that way. And now they pray differently or bigger or boldly because of it. And so you have to look now for different ways to offer that same sort of activation, even from where you are, whether it's behind a screen or not. I see someone asking about how we've been adjusting to that as well, the screen, everything being virtual.
So I want to ask a question, and it's from one of our team members, Eleanor, and she is a violaist. She plays the violaist. Is that correct? Yeah. And so she wants to know, with music being such a big part of your work, how are you able to find ways to use it as a stress reliever during COVID, and what ways are you seeing your creativity affected?
Well, first of all, shout out to fellow violists. I was a violist in middle school and high school, played in the youth symphony. Violas rock, where we give soul to the orchestra, if you don't know what that instrument is. We're the much cooler violin. But so the plan, the plan was to practice every day. That was my musician goal. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get to go back and work on fundamentals, because anybody who knows as a performer, finding practice time, if you have a lot of performances, is difficult. And so that was the plan. It did not happen because homeschool, and because presidential campaign, and because running my company. So music now has been, I set it up for me as this reward that I get to do once I've finished doing all the things that I have to do. So since I don't have the performances as much, the practicing is not as crucial in terms of being able to deliver. So I've set it up as a reward. I am seeing my creativity affected in terms of innovation, even outside of music. We have to come up with solutions. So we had to decide what we're going to do now virtually, as a company, what we were going to offer differently than even others were offering virtually. So it's definitely sparked my creativity, but also the creativity of my teams. And that's been really rewarding to watch.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you could probably apply that to things other than music. Like if you have something creative in your life, it's like you can set it up as a reward. Like if you like to draw, or even if it's reading, or I don't know, I've been doing a lot of puzzles. So,
Yeah.
like it's just like you can set that up to, like, as a reward. It's like, I got all my stuff done, I can go do my puzzle. Or maybe I'm like, you know what, I just need a break, I can go do my puzzle. Yeah, it's I mean, I will say Eleanor has been really great during this period. She's been sending the team like little clips of her playing,
Oh,
just like little bits. And we actually have a few musically inclined people on the team. We have Craig, who plays guitar and banjo and a bunch of other different instruments. So he'll sit and send us a little clips, and suddenly like our team chat is just full of people playing little musical clips. Daria plays the flute, I believe it's the flute, and she's so we have like a little like musical interlude sometimes randomly in the middle of the day, which has been.
You get to know your team members differently. When we do the
Mm-hmm.
live presentations, we always bring people on stage, out of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And no one knows that's coming. They think we plant people, and we don't. And I have no idea what I'm going to get with me on stage. And they have never failed me. They've always risen to the occasion. But what's powerful is the audience gets to see their peers in a new light, and we as leaders get to say, oh my gosh, the teams we have are more capable than when we thought. They can evolve, they can innovate. So I bet that's just so rewarding to see your peers in that way too.
Yeah, no, it is super fun. And so I actually do want to address Judy's question in here, is about transforming your live performances into a virtual setting. Like, what have you been doing?
So, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. We had already decided last October, we were really going to spend dedicated time focusing on building out our virtual offerings, our pre-recorded products, and we didn't get around to it. The campaign happened, that was one thing, but we didn't have to do it, right? We had so many bookings in the live setting, you didn't have to. Now you had to. So one of the things I said earlier is your core values stay the same. Times change, core values stay the same. What was important to us? Customization has been the #1 differentiating factor for me, even more so than the piano. I really pride myself in getting to know every single organization, understanding their mission and their purpose, and weaving that throughout the presentation. So we knew that whatever we offered virtually still had to have a high level of customization. I also love the glam aspect of it, bringing the performer aspect. So you weren't going to see me coming from my studio here with my street clothes on. And if I'm being honest now, I have on leggings you can't see. But none of my live presentations have that. So we knew we needed to offer different levels. So our kind of premium virtual experience, Judy, is live from a concert hall with 4 different camera angles. There's actually a commentator that will host Q&A at the end. I'm in full glam with hair, makeup, outrageous outfit, whatever it is, because we want to be able to offer that same experience. But then we also have another level of live that is more casual, like this from my home studio. We still offer the interactive piece. So we just recorded yesterday in a concert hall a pre-recorded piece because I would have had to been doing it live at 3 a.m. because it's in the Netherlands, which I was willing to do, by the way. Just couldn't find other people willing to do it. But what we did was I'm going to be online with 3 or 4 of their team members on Zoom, and we're going to pre-record one of these interactive moments. So we had people who also had pianos in their homes who, like to make music. We'll do that, insert that into the presentation that we're creating for this client. So we wanted those differentiating factors to stay the same. And then we also have, a more basic pre-recorded presentation that has the same powerful content, but it doesn't have the same customization. So people, if they just need something for their teams right away, we wanted to make sure we were offering a variety of solutions for people who needed them. So again, core values have to stay the same. Whatever made you stand out in the live setting, we wanted that to make us stand out in the virtual as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still playing, still a piano and everything there. Concert grand.
Nice. And this is just for my curiosity. So you're able to find a place where you can go and play.
Yeah, we have a concert hall that I was supposed to give a concert in March, but then COVID-19 happened. Mm-hmm. And we have a good relationship with them. So we rent that hall out. We bring in a film crew, a lighting crew, and everything. It was difficult for me because there was no audience in there. So I'm telling jokes that I know should hit, but so I'm laughing at myself. I'm trying to give pause time to allow the viewing audience to respond. And I'd be lying if I said I like the virtual as much, because I rely so much on in the moment response from the audience. What are they needing? Do they need more energy here? Is this really more of a time of reflection? And then I'll tell a different story or tell it a different way based on real time happenings in the moment. And I like to, playfully pick on people, the CEOs, and scare people and bring them up and have this incredible breakthrough moment. So I do miss it. So I had to just commit to how do I want them to feel when this is done? I may not get the same feelings, but can I, again, shift the focus back on the audience? How do I want them to feel when this is over? So it's been a challenge, but we're excited we feel like we've risen to the occasion there.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually, that just made me laugh because I was on a call over the weekend where we had a speaker recording a presentation, and he had set up all his daughter's stuffed animals and dolls and gave his whole keynote to his audience of stuffed animals, which I thought, I was like, hey, if it works for you, I can imagine it'd be very challenging just to pre-record to an empty room. And I mean, it's challenging enough for us here, knowing that there's a bunch of people on the line, but I can only see you. And so there's definitely a challenge there as far as virtual events go. So I think we're actually going to end a little bit early today. Give everyone a chance to kind of settle before they move on to their next thing. So thank you so much, everyone. We do have a special treat to close out the session, and that is that Jade is going to play us a little something before we go on about our days. And if you have any further questions for me or Jade or anyone on the Big Speak team, please reach out. My email is on all the webinar materials. And we do record every session, and it will be automatically shared with you, as well as those who registered and were unable to attend. Next week on the Big Speak webinar, we will be talking to former Pixar story artist Matthew Lunn, who is actually the person who gave his keynote to his daughter's stuffed animals, which, sorry, Matthew, if you didn't want me to tell people that. And that is scheduled for this same time, May 27th at 10 a.m. Pacific. And registration will be open for that tomorrow and can be found at bigspeak.com/webinar. Starting in June, we're going to be posting all of our registration links on this page to hopefully make it easier for everyone to sign up and to minimize the number of emails that hit your inbox. Jade, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. Such a great conversation, and we obviously love working with you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to play, you probably were expecting something soft and sweet, so I'll do the exact opposite and play something fun and energetic. It'll be a little variation on Flight of the Bumblebee, a jazzy version, which I think really personifies this idea that we can have two different worlds that can come together and really make really powerful music together. So you'll hear the world of boogie woogie and classical combined here. But I also wanted to end. I gave you all the things that you were risking when you have transformative conversation. I want to just end by reminding you what you have to gain. You know, I believe that you get to have powerful discussion. You get to know the people you thought you knew deeper than you did before. You gain empathy and understanding, insight and enlightenment. And maybe most importantly, especially in these times, when we dare to have difficult conversations and dare to make sure they are transformative, we get new solutions, which is what I believe we are so desperately in need of. So thank you all for deciding to engage in a deeper way, to engage in a more transformative way. I'll end now with Flight of the Bumblebee. This is the jazzy version. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jade. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.